Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Kiel and this is the second episode in the Python tutorial for beginners. In the last episode we sort of got our toes wet and we went over some of the main data types like integers, strings, floats, booleans, and we even went a little bit further and established a variable and used the print function. And today we're going to go a little deeper into the basics and explore how we can use those concepts to get input from Python or from a user. Okay, so open up your IDE, whatever it is. Some people may be using PyCharm, Sublime Text, whatever it is. But yeah, open it up and code along with me. So if you are using PyCharm, you go over here, new, and we're just going to create a new file, Python file. We're going to call this episode, episode 2, if I can type. Okay, so we are going to go over more than we did last time, and we're going to introduce some new concepts. But let's start out with variables. So we'll put our little note at the top. I encourage note taking, and if you're new to coding, this is a realization that I came to. This isn't like learning a spoken language, obviously. So, for instance, if you're learning Spanish, you can practice it with somebody. But when it comes to a coding language like Python or any of these, the only way that you can practice it is literally by typing it. So any amount of typing that you can do, I encourage it. So I'll take notes. There'll be times where you see things like, let's see if it'll try to, yeah. If it tries to auto-fill something, I do my best to not do it, just so as I can improve on, typing and also trying to remember what it is that I'm supposed to type. Because you think you know it, but you'll get in a situation where you really need it, and then all of a sudden, you have no clue what's going on. So, yeah. Anyways, we'll start out with a variable. So, we are going to, let's just say a equals 33. So, now we have a variable a, and it has the value of 33. And 33 is a specific type of data. So does anyone know which data type this is? Probably say it, whatever. I mean, I guess this ain't Blue's Clues, but yeah, 33 is an integer. But what if you don't know what 33 is? Let's say you don't know. You don't have access to the back end of things. You don't see this. All you see somewhere is a. I can't think of a super good example for this, but there is a function that will allow you to know what type of data a is, and that's called the type function. So the way that you use this is a lot like our print function that we talked about in the first episode. And what you do is, if we want to figure out the type of data that a is, we can do print parentheses, because remember, everything that you want to print, you want to put inside the parentheses. But we want to know the type of a. So instead of print a, which we'll go ahead and do that just to be thorough. Oops, scoot this up. Okay, print a, and we shift F10 or just push play, and it returns 33. We knew that would happen. Okay, but we're trying to know what type of data a is. Let's say again, we didn't know it was 33. We could do print parentheses type, and like I showed you, type has to have the parentheses. All these functions are followed by parentheses. So I remember this being really confusing at the beginning, so I'm going to kind of touch on this. all these parentheses, you can get lost in it, and I'm gonna kind of elaborate on that as we go, because after it clicked for me, it finally clicked. There was no more struggling with it. So if you are sort of confused or whatever, it's okay. Like, everybody goes through that. But again, okay, so we have print parentheses, and then we put type parentheses because we're using that function, and then we put a inside of it. So we're going to print, and then we're going to use the type function on a. So let's run that. And it returns class int. So we know that the variable a is an integer, or it holds the value of an integer. So that's super useful to know. We are going to be in many situations where you need to know how to figure out what something is. You might not have access to it. So having the knowledge of the type function is super useful. But yeah, okay, so let's add another thing to this. Let's add name equals, let's do something. Bartholomew. Is it Mew? Bartholomew? Yeah, Bartholomew. I had like a little palm tree a long time ago, and I named it Bartholomew, but I guess I've never had to type it out, so that might not be right. Either way, actually it's underlined wrong, so we're just going to shorten this, and we're going to say Bart for short. We're going to capitalize it. So we have two variables here. We have a, and it is storing the value of an integer, and we have name, which is storing the value of what? People probably know. Again, it's not Blue's Clues. I was going to say, put it in the comments, something like that, whatever. I mean, you can, but yeah. Okay, so let's run the type function on Bart. So instead of putting it through the print function, because this is something that I played with in the beginning, what happens when you just put type and pass name through it? Let's comment this out so as it doesn't, so as it isn't evaluated. Nothing prints down here. That's a good thing and that's a bad thing, because we wanted something to print, but we didn't get an error message, so that's at least something. So everything, at least this far, is good. When nothing shows up, that's at least a good sign that there's not a problem. But again, we want to know what's going on, so let's do it right. Print parentheses, because every function is going to have the word or the abbreviation or whatever it is, and it's going to have its own parentheses, because these parentheses are there to act as sort of the box that you pass the argument into. So like how I said variables can be looked at as a box that you put a value in, these parentheses are similar. I don't want to take that analogy too far out, because there's things later that you'll learn that might kind of like obscure that, but for right now you can think of it like that. All these functions come with a box. That way you can put something in them, and that's these parentheses. So print type, another function, so we know it's got to have parentheses, and we're going to put in the variable name. And I think a lot of the reason why I'm going over these parentheses is because I remember at the beginning doing something like, let's just say, print type, it's auto-filling, of course, and then like A or something. And this would always mess me up, and I'd be like, what is going on? Why is this not right? And it's because whatever it was, I wasn't paying attention to the fact that a function is beyond just the word here. It's actually this whole structure. So that's kind of why I'm saying this. But anyways, we'll move on. Print type, and then put the variable name in there. Let's run it. Class string. Okay, so we know that Bart is a string, which we did know that, because of course, what are the characteristics of a string? Does anybody remember? it's the parentheses. The parentheses are a dead giveaway. If something is in between a parentheses like this, or quotation marks, what am I saying? Quotation marks. There's no telling how many times I've said that instead of the right word. But yeah, strings have parentheses. Okay. And this is an integer. Okay, so we have a variable here that's an integer, and we have a variable here that's a string. So how would we use these together, right? Because you can use a string with a string, and you can actually add a string to a string. So you can do something like name equals Bart, and let's just do last name equals let's just do Bill. Okay. You can do let's see, print name plus, see it trying to autofill, we don't want that, last name. Let's comment this out. Bart, Bill. And so it added those two together. And this is something that you're probably wondering, like, why isn't there a space? We will go over this. But the point of what I'm showing you is the string, the value of the string can be added to another string because they are of the same type. But what happens when you try to add a string to an integer? So let's find out. So name, that'll be Bart, plus a, right? Because here it is. So name plus a. So if this runs like, you know, you would think it would. If you didn't know, you would think that it would probably say Bart 33. But we get an error. So let's pull this up and look at it. Line 9 usually tells you where it's at. In module, print, and then it shows the problem. So it's basically saying that we aren't allowed to use this comparison operator, which I probably should have gone over before we used it, but that's fine. This plus sign, and then we'll get back to it. Can only concatenate string, not int, to string. So concatenate means to add to, and we will go over this, but it's basically saying you can't add a string to an integer. So, and fair enough, right? Okay, so we now know that. So there's times though that it's necessary to add a variable, or I'm sorry, there are times when it's necessary to add a string to an integer and get an input back, or whatever it is. So what do you do? Well, that's why we have these variable types. Let's see. Let's make some room. Let's get this out. And this is where we're going to introduce getting some input back from the user, or from Python, or from ourselves, whatever. We're going to make a little program. And we're actually going to make an age calculator. But before we do that, very quick, because I realized that I didn't go over the comparison operators. Let's see. Compare comparison operators, and those are plus sign, all the obvious stuff, the minus sign, the multiplication, which is just the asterisk, I can't ever say the word, and then for division we use the forward slash. So these are comparison operators. You'll usually just say operators, and you use them about like you would in everyday life. You know, you can use this to add something, to subtract, to multiply, and to divide. There are more, like the modular. I don't know how to say that word either. This isn't necessary for this lesson, so we won't go into it. But comparison operators are something that we're going to use in our little program. our age calculator. Okay, now we're going to make our age calculator. And it starts out with, we need a couple variables, right? Okay, so we'll have name equals, and we're going to make one that other people can use. So we need to get input from the user, or from ourselves in this case, because we're going to be practicing. And the way that we do that is by using the input function. So you would say, instead of how we did earlier with name equals quotations and then the name, we go back. We go name equals input, do our parentheses, because again it's a function, and then quotations, and we say, what is your name? And what's going on here is we're saying that name is going to store the input of whatever the answer to this question is. And I remember at the beginning of this being sort of that just kind of not making sense. A shortcut, okay, one way to understand this is anytime you see input, just know that this thing is going to be asking someone to enter something. This is an instance where someone's going to be able to interact with the terminal or the game or whatever it is that you're making. So in order to reuse this variable, instead of having to hard code 50 different names if you're like logging in somewhere, we make it we make name store the input of whatever's put in there. So I know I've probably over explained that, but we'll go forward. So name equals input, what is your name? And so that's the first question we're going to want to know, what someone's name is. And then we're going to say age, it is input equals quotations, what is, let's do it right. How old are you? Okay. Okay, so we have a name, an input, and age input. But if you pay attention to this, age isn't going to, you're not asking for a string. So although this is a string, whatever they type back isn't going to be. It's going to be a number, because they're not going to put quotations around the number, right? So we need to dictate to Python to make sure that it knows that the answer that's being given here is actually going to be an integer. So I could put int before this, but I'm going to show you how you would do it. So age, we know is an integer, so we're going to put int parentheses, right? Because now we're going to use the int function to transform a string into an integer. I'm not using the right word, transform, it's something else. But to turn it into an integer. So age equals int input, didn't mean to delete that, input, and then you do your quotations, how old are you? If I can type, then maybe we'll get an answer. So this is what I was talking about. There'll be sometimes you'll see two parentheses at the end. This can sort of get confusing. Just remember, it's being counted for every set. So integer requires a set of parentheses. So there's one, and obviously it's going to be on the outside because we put input on the inside of it, and input has its two. So that's one way of keeping up with this. And a lot of the times, like, you'll run something and you'll have an error, and it will come back to the fact that you're literally missing one of these parentheses. But anyways, let's move on. And so what happens when we get the input? We ask the question, what is your name? And they say something, and then we say, what is your age? And then we say something. So let's try that. What is your name? So now we can click down here and we can say, let's just say Jim, and we push enter. And then I'd ask the next question. How old are you? Let's say Jim is 45. Okay, the process is over. It just exited out the code because it did everything it was supposed to do. We have to program a way for it to either tell us something back or something like that. So we'll use the print function. So we'll say, after we collect name and age, we will print parentheses, and we're going to use I'm debating whether or not to do the F strings or to do concatenation. We'll do an F string because I feel like it's simpler. We will go over concatenation, but F strings really are more simple. So we'll say print, and I'm going to explain what that is. It's super simple. Print. Let's see. Hello, and again, okay, so I guess it's probably important that we clarify this. This is an age calculator. And this isn't going to be a super complex one. We're just going to say basically how old you'll be in a year based on their input. So hello, and then we'll use curly brackets in our string. So we're going to print a string, and that's going to return the value of what they input. But instead of, we don't know what their name is, right? But we have created this name variable. And so the way that we use that without knowing what their input is we use an F string. And so before the parentheses, before the quotations, you put an F. Now, do you see how it changed the color of this little, what is this called, curly brackets? Okay, that's how you know it is like recognized that it's a F string. Anyways, curly brackets, and then we put a variable. So the only way that you can put or pass a variable into a string is by using putting this little F and then putting it inside curly brackets. So hello name, you will be, it's trying to auto predict, but we don't want that, curly brackets, age plus 1, right? Step outside of the curly brackets or let's just say hello name, you will be age plus 1 next year. And let's put an exclamation point 2 times because let's just say we're really excited about that. So right now we have the print function, and we're using something called an F string. And the reason for using the F string is because we want to pass variables into the string. And the way that we pass variables is inside the curly brackets, just like the way that we put a string is inside the quotations. So let's run this and let's see what happens. What is your name? Let's say Jim. How old are you? Let's say he's 34. Hello Jim, you will be 35 next year. So that's pretty cool. This is an actual program. It's not super high level, but as your first program, like I remember this being one of my first, and I was super excited that I just got something to like appear in the terminal, right? I mean, that's that's awesome. But you see how we have Jim right up next to the question and the age right up next to that? We can actually do something about that to make it look a little bit better. And so what we're going to do is when you put when you write the input thing and you say what is your name, after the question mark there is a little, it's not called a function, I don't think. There's something you can do that you can let the code know that you want it to create another line. And so you do \n, and you put this after the question mark but still inside the parentheses. And what this does is it tells the input here, ask the question but create a new line right after that. And so let's look at what that does. \n, and we'll do it here too. And we'll push play. Okay, we have to click down here. What is your name? And you see, I just clicked randomly, but it put it here. What happens if you click here, right? And we'll say Jim. Well, it still puts it below. So that's pretty cool. It makes it a lot neater. Let's push enter. How old are you? And you see how it put it down here now. Let's say he's 32. Enter. Hello, Jim. You will be 33 next year. And so that's awesome. That's a little. It's like a level up. You know, it's a little bit. It looks a lot better, in my opinion, to put the. Is it backslash or forward slash? Either way, to create that line, to put the text in is just. It just feels a lot better to me. And maybe we need to go back over the concept of the F string, because I kind of just threw that in there, and that wasn't how I intended to do it, but all the same, it happened. So let's do a little note, and we'll say F string, and we'll say, let's go back, allows you to put variables inside a string. And there's a bunch of situations where you're going to need to do this. And also, I don't know if you noticed, but we did just put two different variables of two different data types in the same string without having to clarify or do any special thing. Like, you know, we know that name is a string, but age isn't, right? And so we didn't have to put int beforehand. If we did, in fact, it would have just tried to print out that as part of the sentence. So I can actually show you that. What is your name? We'll say Bob. How old are you? Bob is 43. Enter. Hello, Bob. You will be int 44 next year, right? So that's not how it works. And that's a really useful thing. I actually, when I first started out, learned F strings before I learned concatenation, which is apparently the way that you're supposed to learn it first. And it is important to know, because when I did go back and try to learn like how to go from beginning to end, they were talking about concatenation, and I had no clue what was going on, and it was a big ordeal. For this video, we won't address it, just because we're probably, I don't know how far in, but this has already been a lot of stuff thrown at you. But yeah, this is our first program, and that's super awesome. So this is something to practice, and like I was saying earlier, you know, practicing coding is a lot different than, you know, say Spanish or something, because this absolutely relies on you interacting with it yourself, most of the time with yourself. So, you know, again, if we were learning Spanish together, we'd probably talk to each other in Spanish, but code, there's just no other way of practicing this. Like, you literally just have to try to type it. And I'll tell you this, when I first started out, it just wasn't clear to me how to make progress, and whether or not typing along with the person I was watching is making progress. I didn't know that it was, and it is, because what's happening is, even though right now you might have typed this out and you don't fully understand it, that's fine. The fact is, you're familiarizing yourself with seeing it, and that is a big deal. Like, you're seeing how this is laid out and how this is laid out, and you know, you're hearing all the words I'm saying, you're executing it, and whether or not you know it, you are picking up little tidbits here and there. And one way of practicing, which this is what I've done, this is what I still do, is create another file. Name it, you know, practice, whatever. And it's brand new. Now, try to recreate what we just did. Don't click back over there. Just try to recreate it, right? So we know we had name equals, and then if you're like me, you'll immediately blank out. Like, even though you just looked at the page, you have no clue what the hell was just written on the on the last file, and that's okay. That's literally everybody. And so yeah, name equals input, and then parentheses. And practice. Try to memorize how to write it, because while memorizing something may not mean you understand it, it will eventually mean that you understand it because you'll be writing it, right? If that makes sense. It might not all add up at the beginning, but I promise you, if you stick with this will super make sense really quick, and we will start going more and more advanced and getting into a lot more intricate concepts. So for this video, that's probably enough, and yeah, you should be super proud of yourself. Like seriously, this is a big deal. It's a lot to understand, and take notes. Do all these things from memory. Practice in another file, and yeah, I really appreciate you watching my video. And if you have any questions, or if I'm going too slow or fast or whatever, if you got something to say, put it in the comments. That's fine. And in the next video, we will get a little bit more into conditional statements and stuff like, excuse me, if and else, and yeah, we'll go a little bit more in depth, and we'll probably, of course, go over what we went into this time. But yeah, that's about it, and thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you next time.